welcome back to the Rugby Pod. I'm Andy Ryan, Big Jim and Goode here with me as usual. We'll be hearing from Rassie Erasmus and his dog Frank, who sent us a nice wee voice note over the weekend. Then we'll be looking back at all the weekend action as Leicester suffered their first defeat in the premiership season and Bath got their first win. Then we'll be joined by Gloucester centre Billy Twelvetrees after their Saracens win. And don't forget, make sure you've subscribed on Spotify.
Pod.
Rugby Pod.
Well, should we start with the voice note, lads? That must have been the highlight of your week.
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was a welcomed boost. For me personally, Andrew, I know that you've had your own interactions with him, but he mentioned my name. He mentioned the pod. He couldn't work out whether we were taking the piss or not. We weren't. Were we? I don't know.
Who knows, mate? Who knows?
I could have been. Depends what day it was. But lovely little thumbnail as well. And for you, Goode, that's just the kind of a holding picture video of the flag. His digital creative nous, as well as being one of the best coaches in the world, and the fact that he sounded like he had 25 bottles of wine responsibly, made my week, I will be honest. So Rassie, I would have liked to follow. He only follows one person. Have you seen who that is?
Well, I know, James. I know who it is. Because he sent me a couple of messages on Twitter over the weekend, just a couple of DMs. And I went back to him. No, it's not actually. It's Augustin Pichot. I think he wants Augustin Pichot to be head of World Rugby, doesn't he?
Is that what it is? I can't work out what it is. But anyway, I like it. He ain't following Bill Beaumont. That's all. Not that he should. I mean, we obviously had Bill and Augustin on the podcast. Absolutely loved it. It felt like a political debate. But he's following, like you said, Augustin Pichot, #9 or whatever it is, whatever his profile handle is. I want him to follow me. Come on, Rassie. Come on.
Well, I did ask him privately. I said, are you looking forward to your appearance on the pod when you're coming on? And I think he's in some sort of, I don't know, it's kind of weird. He's in some sort of media lockdown, yet he's still posting the best things on social media. He's just going out on his own, on a limb, isn't he? Just posting him and his dog and having fun and all that stuff. Yet actual serious content, not that our podcast is too serious, but a serious interview within the media sphere that we live in, he's blanketing everything at the minute and he's not doing it. So, but he has said he'll come on at some point. So that some point could be, if we're still going in 10 years and he hasn't come on, we'll get him on then.
Well, let's just have a listen to that clip now, shall we?
Hey, you guys and ladies, if there is there at the Rugby Pod, it's Rassie here. Yeah, I just want to say thank you. I'm not sure if you're choking my chain or you're being serious, but it doesn't really matter. I just want to say thank you for not the award, for having some fun with me, with my dog and so on. I know both of you, I played against you, but I mean, both of you've been really trying hard to get me onto your show, your podcast. And unfortunately, I can't do it right now, but it's so nice. We call it lekker in South Africa when people understand that a coach or a player or anybody is just full of mistakes like all of us. And yeah, we just happen to be, well, hopefully good in rugby. But we're not perfect people and we're not saints and we don't do things not right. And it's nice to see that you guys bring some humor into it. I like the way you guys conduct yourself, the way you talk when you have your interviews. So yeah, I'm not sure if you're pulling my chain or having a bit of fun with me, but like a guy like Joe Marler, whoever, I just like, I think it's a world where we should supposed to be to say what we feel and without being afraid and nervous. And it's lucky to see you guys doing it and having some fun back with me. So big shout out to you guys and appreciate it a lot. And I hope it's a great 2022 for you guys. Thank you, Rassie. Bye.
Jim, first and foremost, he's probably, as you said, had about 28 bottles of Van Rouge responsibly. But how good is that to get a message off probably the best coach in the world?
Who's pulling the chain? What does that mean? Does that mean what we would say in pulling your piss, or is that what we'd say?
Yeah, pull your pisser, pull the chain, choking the chain, whatever, choke the monkey. What?
Taking the piss.
Choking the head off one. Yeah, you just can't say that, Jim. But what I mean is, he knows it. He likes the fact that he listens to the pod, so he likes the fact that we say what we want and we're honest and we have a bit of fun with it. That's how he wants to be. But actually, there's a load of constraints on these top coaches, isn't there, of what they can and can't do. And he's having a bit of fun at the minute within his freedom of his ban. He's not in the mainstream media, but he's just doing it on social media, basically having a laugh and taking a piss. And it's actually fun to see, I think.
You could say that social media is mainstream media. It's as mainstream as you get, in my opinion. Yeah. But I know what you mean. Now, I didn't like the fact that he likened us to Joe Marler. I don't walk around wearing jumpsuits like I'm a Polish painter, but it's one of them where I'm looking at the way that he's interacting. I'm loving it. I know some stuff around Nick Berry, what he tweeted in the statement. There's another side to it. What we should do is like we did with P-Show and Bill Beaumont. Get them both on, right, and let the public decide. In this world that we live in, and I don't know, I flip-flop left and right, if you can say left and right these days, about which way and how we should live our lives. So depending on the day and how I feel, I'll probably go with the masses on, should you be able to do what Rassie did? As a referee, should you take that? I don't really know. It's a rhetorical question. But what I'm saying is 2022, let's get them on, and it's never going to happen. So Rassie, come on, and just let's put the worlds to right, mate. I'm happy to drink 25 bottles of red responsibly.
Before we get into the weekend's action, Guinness Six Nations is coming up. It's only a few weeks away, and we have our biggest ever Rugby Pod live tour lined up. And we're coming to a couple of new places as well, aren't we, guys?
Oh, yes, we are. There's one big name on the list. There is one big location that I can't wait for. It's that moment, James. It's that moment. Well, it's that moment to meet your nemesis, meet where the eyes were locked across a nightclub. There was love in the air. Tiddy Von Tramp and Jim Hammond. We're going to Belfast, boys.
Brilliant.
You see how I didn't know which place that was. That could have been a number of the locations that we're going to. But you're right, Belfast is one. There's been huge appetite. If that place don't sell out in 5 minutes, then I might not go, because the 10 messages I've had of people wanting to come to the Belfast show basically shows me that it's going to be sold out. Liverpool is a bit of a weird one. They love their ruggers up there. Is that the Wirral or not? Is that not Liverpool?
Yeah, that area.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Well, Merseyside is Liverpool, but the Wirral is a bigger area.
And Manchester and London and obviously Edinburgh as well. # always.
And
so,
Dublin.
Yeah,
mate,
and Dublin.
How good is it going to be to get back to Dublin? Dublin, I reckon, is my favourite place. Right. So staying at the Dean Hotel, opposite where we do the event at the D2, but also there's Copperface Jack's literally 2 doors away. Like, it's just going to be a quiet one. I'm just tell the missus and the kids it's going to be a quiet one. I've got to go away for 2 days though for that event. So, mate, I can't wait.
The last time we were in Dublin, me and Goode got on a rickshaw to drive 2 doors down the road, which if me and Goode get on a rickshaw together, that means it's on, like Donkey Kong. So if anyone in Dublin sees us on a rickshaw, you know that me and Andrew are on it responsibly.
So we're going to be kicking things off in Edinburgh on the 3rd of February. Then we're back in London on the 10th of February before Cardiff on the 24th, Dublin on the 9th of March. And then for the very first time, we are hitting Belfast on the 10th of March, Manchester on the 15th, then Liverpool on the 16th of March. We've got a very special guest lined up for each one, including Chris Ashton for London, Manchester and Liverpool. So we can find out exactly what happened at Worcester, and he can be horrible to Jim.
You're booing him there, Jim. You don't want him to come, James?
Well, unless he brings the most sensational stories, which he's promised me he will. He said that he hasn't signed an NDA or anything like that, so he's going to let loose. And I've told him, because it's March, because I'm going on my holiday, and the fact that you've had a booster and lost 10 stone, that we're going to look incredible. So he needs to get on the tanning beds, get the tegs done, ready for what's going to be our biggest tour ever, hopefully.
And they do tend to get pretty loose because the live shows are not recorded. So make sure you get your mates, your teammates, get them together, get involved for a great night. Tickets are available on eventbrite.co.uk just by searching for the Rugby Pod. And a massive thank you to Guinness, who are supporting us and will be giving everyone a free pint on the night as well. Shall we have a look at the premiership? Shall we get into the rugby then?
Ruggers. All out ruggers, wasn't it, James?
It was, and I don't know whether you want to start with the game that was the last game, Andrew, because I do feel as if there's a genuine apology coming from myself.
Really, James?
Yeah.
Well, there might, on that note, there might also be an apology later on from me as well to someone else.
Shall I start?
You go first, James. Go on, you say sorry first.
Oh, it's a real good vibe going on today, guys. Everyone's
look at us.
Nice to each other.
It's all the creativity down in London. Lee Blackett's interview after the game. Bloody loved it. And that made me feel bad for taking the piss on air about Wasps, having not even seen the game. Like, I'll just come on air and be like, yeah, Wasps, how bad this year? When obviously in the background, there is so much work going on. Like, we've got such an easy job because we can sit at home, flick on our phones, watch the game superficially, take opinions from the experts on TV, regurgitate what they're saying, and there's no emotion attached to it. Now, I was watching Lee Blackett. We've had him on the show, and I really like him. Like, he seems like a really top bloke. Everything you hear is great around him. And I've come on here, taking the piss out of Wasps, not even understanding the amount of work. I do understand. I've obviously been in it, but the amount of stress they must be under. And you could see him in the box during the game, and the game was going back and forth all match. Second half, Wasps were class. And you could see Leicester potentially winning at the end. You're like, please, no, especially with the scrums. And Lee Blackett does the interview, and there's a part of me where I was going to ring him up and say, I'm sorry for taking the piss, because seeing how much it meant to him was like so pure. And for that, I'm sorry. So anyone that listens, when I do take the piss, apart from Quins and Worcester and England, yeah, when I'm taking the piss, right, it's done on very tongue-in-cheek style. It's done in the Jim Hamilton way. So for that, I'm sorry, but fair play. I know that you'll get into more detail, Andrew, because you were there, but watching Wasps play the way that they did in the second half with a lot of players I didn't even know who they were, and the quality and the desire against Leicester, who they weren't as good. They've obviously been fairly comfortable this season in terms of results. I know some of them have been close, and you could see one of them performances come in, but fair play to Wasps, and what a game it was, especially in that second half. So Lee Blackett, Wasps, I'm sorry. Malachi Fekitoa, my old selfie, you're not needed. Head to Munster, you're not needed, as you were.
What? Head to where?
Munster, is he?
Oh, no comment. Don't know.
Oh, okay.
I interviewed him yesterday, actually, up at the CBS Arena.
Did you get a selfie?
Said, well, no, I said, do you want to get a selfie? And he said, well, I'll just do them on my own these days again. So anyway, I did ask him, I said, listen, before we go on, Derek Richardson, the owner, is in the room. Normally I give a bit of banter about contracts when it's been out in the press, and you know, I can turn to Derek and say, Derek, just stick another zero on it and I'm sure we'll sign him. Just throwaway comments like that. He looked at me. Now, he's a scary fucking bloke on the field, is Malachi Fekitoa. Lovely guy. I've looked at him and I said, look, any chance I can give you a bit of banter about the contract scenario? Obviously, it's gone out in the press around what might be happening, what might not be happening. And he's a scary bloke on the field. You see, when his eyes go on the field, you're like, mate, don't run down his channel, because he'll go and belt people and he'll lose his head properly. And he's just looked at me, he's given me the eyes, he's like, Goode, you don't ask me that. I'm like, mate, no problem. I'm sorry for even thinking about it. I started apologising to him for even thinking about giving him some banter. So, yeah, no, he's a nice guy. I don't know the scenario. We saw the interview with Lee Blackett pre-match. I think they were chatting about Vi Fafita, who has turned up to Wasps and been really good, but he's on a 1+1 deal. The rumour is he's going to Scarlets. Apparently, Scarlets have found a truckload of money for him. And like anything, you're seeing these contracts where people are moving now because, you know, we know the salary cap's been reduced. So yeah, it's tough. And Malachi Fekitoa now, you know, he's a great player. He's been out injured a fair bit this year. He'll be back in a couple of weeks. But yeah, I mean, listen, it was interesting for me yesterday. Obviously, I work at match day at Leicester as well as I do at Wasps. And people were like, Goode, who are you supporting? I'm like, you know, I'm here in a Wasps capacity today, so I just hope it's a good game of rugby. And it wasn't the greatest game of rugby, but the tension at the end, and you look at what exactly Jim said, what Wasps have been through, when you've lost a load of props and you lose your starting loosehead on the morning of the game down to COVID, Tom West, you know, Robin Hislop comes on and has a tough time with Dan Cole. When Dan Cole went off, I was like, oh, thank God for that. If you're a prop looking at Dan Cole walking off, he's just absolutely annihilated you in the scrum the whole game, you're happy. But then they bring on Joe Hayes, who's an England international as well. And effectively, you tweeted about it, Jim, but when you're looking at those scrums at the end, and it was an interesting call. Leicester obviously wanted to they could have taken the draw, they could have kicked the penalty and had a couple of minutes left to try and find a win, but they were confident, very confident in their scrum. So they should have been with the front row they had. all international front row in terms of Genge was still on at the end. Nick Dolly came off the bench, and Joe Hayes as well, going up against, without being mean, a Wasps front row that was, you'd probably say, is a third choice front row. Although Dan Frost is a very good player, he had a big impact.
He was class.
He was amazing. I read a story about him. He was, during COVID, he was a bouncer at Jack Noel's pub in Cornwall, where he was just checking people's COVID status. I'm like, mate, what an uprising from doing that to being, he's probably Wasps' best hooker, to be fair, at the minute. I'm going to say one thing about Leicester, and it might be controversial because they've won all the games up until this point. But over the last few weeks, and especially against Wasps at the weekend, the amount they kick the ball is ridiculous. And I know it's the game plan of playing no rugby in their half, but like with 5 minutes to go, you've got Ollie Chesham, who's making a break down the wing. Even he's kicking it as well. So it's so far drilled into them. And I think they've got into a position now where they're thinking, if we just keep playing this way, we won't lose we might not lose the game. So they're playing not to lose as opposed to playing to win it. When you get to knockout rugby, you can't have that mentality. So you need a bit more to your game. So I think actually the loss will do, sounds weird, but it will do Leicester a bit of a favour. It might force them to play a bit more further into the half. George Ford is playing well, but he's just kicking the leather off it. I dread to think how many kicks he put in the game in terms of, and this is coming from me, who all I could do not that well was kick. But you want to see Leicester playing a bit more, and I think they should have won that comfortably yesterday.
What did you make of the Genge Hougaard incident, Goode?
Well, it was the supposed hardest bloke on one team going after the best looking bloke on the other. I mean, we haven't seen a lot of Francois Hougaard this season. In a Wasps jersey, he's been injured a bit. There's a lot of stuff on social media. He's down in London a fair bit and all this, but actually he fronted up properly, put it in for the jersey at the weekend. And I think Genge was just frustrated. Yeah, I suppose the thing with Genge is he's probably seen the ruck and he's got a bit of a run up, and he can see Hougaard with his name on the back, number 14, over the ball. And he's thinking, I'm just going to go and blitz the life out of a winger. The baby rhino's coming. He flew in, and because Hougaard is a physical specimen, I'm going to just call him a physical specimen. Tell the photo that in the changing room straight after the game when he's got his top off. There's more than 25 abs there, I'm saying. Ridiculous rig. Anyway, Genge couldn't blow him off the ruck. He's got up and he's kind of gone to push him away. There's a finger that's gone towards the eye. He's not deliberately trying to gouge him. He's just trying to push him away. But actually, he then pulls his hair. And one of my rules in life is never fucking touch the lid. Since it's been done, you've never touched the hair. And actually, I'm just going to throw it out there. I don't know whether he's going to get cited or whatever. Chris Ashton got banned for pulling Alassana Tuolangi's hair. When you look at the World Rugby regulations around sanctions, pulling hair is a red card. Low end ban is 2 weeks. So was he lucky to get away with a yellow card? Potentially. When you look at the incident, do you think yellow card is justified? You could look at the incident and go, yeah, it's a yellow card. But actually, when you go into it and go and look at the framework around what World Rugby have put in there for violent play and the tackle area and high tackles and all this stuff, hair pulling is in there and it is a red card. So be interested to see what happens.
If you had your skullet like you had before and
never
he pulled it like
that,
that, but that's what I mean. But if he did pull that, I'm telling you now, your head would be detached from your body. Like, as in the purchase he would have got on that. He was lucky that Hougaard's got shorter hair. He lost the plot, didn't he? He saw that's the baby rhino that we've missed. That was the red mist, weren't it? That we've not seen in a while. So I saw something in our last game against Bristol. He was a little bit like that. And look, you don't know how much of the stuff around the media and the Bristol stuff has affected him, but he lost the plot, didn't he? And he's got that in him. And having been one of those players that has seen the red mist 1 or 2 times, it's in you. And trying to suppress it is a work on.
You mentioned Bristol's there. Got the bonus point on Friday night. Are they making a late push, do you think, for the semi-finals?
It's one win, Andy Rowe. Come on. But a much-needed one. And you know what? Goode last week got me thinking. He prodded me thought-provoking tools, whatever they are. I don't know what tools they are inside me that make me think, but he did. And he said that the run to the end of this season, to the top 4, the second half of this season, it's easy to say, it's going to be interesting. It's easy to throw away that comment. But in terms of the teams that have got players to come back, in terms of the teams that haven't been in form, But he was right. You look at the results at the weekend, and Bristol being one of them, out of all the games, and again, Goode was right. He mentioned it. You look at the teams that Bristol have played, your Exeters and your Leicesters. When you're looking at say you look at the 3 games, this would have been the one for them, wouldn't it? In terms of it's a winnable game if they can get their physicality right, if they can get into the outside edge, if they can take risks, if Semi can keep hold of the ball and play better than he has in recent weeks because he's the best player, and all them things married up. So that's a huge win for them because of the bonus point as well, and the fact that, probably similar to Wasps in terms of confidence going forward to the rest of the season, you've played against a physical team that, albeit have got their own problems, but have won games this season. They're a good team, well coached, and you're at home. And you talk about desperado, like they would have been desperate to win that game, desperate because of where Sale are in the Prem as well. And well, it doesn't need me to say, does it? It's a huge win for them.
Personally, right now, when you sum it up, we're halfway through the Premiership season. Leicester are top comfortably. Saracens are second. Harlequins are third. I think there's a lot of teams only fighting for the 4th spot now. And it might be an early call to say that, but Leicester top, 51 points. Saracens second, 43. Harlequins third on 42. And then Gloucester fourth on 38 points. It's Gloucester, we know they're doing exceptionally well this year, but then you factor in Exeter, you factor in Sale, you factor in Bristol, you factor in Saints, Wasps potentially as well. Obviously the likes of Bath and Worcester, potentially Newcastle, the way their form is at the minute, they might slip down. But everyone else will be pushing, and they'll kind of be saying, we want to make top 6 or top 8, depending on what Europe is next year, and then try and push the top 4. But these teams are, Exeter could have beaten Harlequins at the weekend with 14 men. They're sitting in 6th at the minute. Who'd have thought that, except for Jim Hamilton, so they're not going to make the top 4. But we shall see, James.
What about Bath?
Hey, they got 6 points on Sunday from one. Well, I say from one game. From one day, they got 6 points. They got a victory against Worcester. They got a 4-point victory against Worcester, and then on the same day, Premiership Rugby confirmed they got 2 points for their COVID-affected game against London Irish the week before. So 6 points in one day. I mean, they've only got 10 points in the league, so they're overly doubled their points tally for the season in one day. So well done, Bath.
Do you think Rory Sutherland deserved to be sent off in that match?
Yeah, in terms of the tackle, in terms of the law, it's a red card. I saw what Jonathan Thomas said after the game. And it's a red card in the 3rd minute of the game or something, like really, really early on. And basically, it's Will Stewart gets the ball, puts a bit of footwork on from a prop, which they do these days. And the fact is, Rory Sutherland is so upright the whole time. He's basically tackling upright, chest on chest, and he's done it. He's not deliberately tried to whack him with a head or with a shoulder to the head, but because he's so upright, and this is what we've been saying for a couple of years now. And again, it goes back to the line speed issue where players are trying to get off the line, so they sprint forward really quickly, and then they try and react really late at the sort of tackle zone, and they can't dip in time. So effectively what they're trying to do is take a bit of the line speed away so you're in control of your body. Now, I'll tell you now, Rory Sutherland hasn't flown out the line thinking, I'm going to try and go head on head or shoulder to head or anything like that. What he's done is he's got his technique completely wrong by flying off the line early in the game. He's been upright. He's probably thinking I can just hit him chest on chest. But that then leads obviously to the dangers of where World Rugby are trying to change things to look after players' heads, and letter of the law, it's a red card. Intent, there isn't any, but it's the fact of the position he's put himself in has led to head-on-head contact. I think Will Stewart went off and didn't come back on. So obviously there's an injury related to it. So letter of the law, it's a red card.
What about Alex Hepburn's red card right on the stroke of halftime, Exeter's defeat at Quins?
Oh, again, I don't know. I know, some people are saying it is an out-and-out red.
Yeah.
If you don't look at the lead up to the relationship them two are having in the game, Joe Marler and Alec Hepburn, then you might think differently about it, because it got a bit heated in that game. I've got to say it, because I think it was an unfortunate one. I really do. It's the fact that he lifted the leg, but he's not lifted the leg with any force at all. It was the dynamics of the clip. I don't think he has. I genuinely don't think he has.
The speed, for me, the speed of the flip. Yeah.
Speed, force, are they the same thing? But I'm saying that Simmons has hit him Marler so hard because you've got to, because he's big and he's hard over ball. And Hepburn's come in, and it's just, I'm saying it, I just think it was unfortunate. I don't think, again, same thing, he's not going to go into that breakdown thinking, I'm going to spear him into the ground, or I'm going to, rotate him so he hits there. I think it's one of them split-second things. It looked like it was almost too easy for him. Do you know what I mean? Like in terms of the mechanics of it, because Simmons has hit him hard, Marler's rolled out, and he's got hold of the leg. That is my opinion. I've watched it 4 or 5 times. I was like, you know what? What's the point? Because it's a red card. Let's just say Marler milked it, yeah. Of course. I don't know whether he was wearing a Polish paper suit on the way to the game. I don't know. Did anyone say that or not?
No, I don't. I do completely agree with Jim around how I don't think he's intentionally thought I'm going to drive his head into the floor here. But there's obviously a bit of bite in it where he really wrenches the leg. And the consequence of doing that is he lands on his head. Now, obviously, the dynamics of it with Simmons in the clear out as well. The ref's got no choice, though, has he? Like, letter of the law.
That's the thing.
You've gone above the horizontal.
He's got no choice.
You've tipped him and he's gone headfirst into the ground. He's got no choice whatsoever.
I might sound an idiot with my comments there, but again, you've summarised that last bit by saying the referee didn't have a choice. Like, that was one of them where he didn't have a choice, because players, if they've been forced into that position, which he was, and landed on his head, it is a red card. My point being, it's like, it didn't look as bad as maybe it was. But again, I'll probably change my mind next week when he gets banned for 3 months.
It was another time for Marcus Smith to shine at the end, wasn't it, Goode?
I mean, first and foremost, Andre Esterhuizen gets man of the match, and he is, I think I gave him the Goode last week. He's just got man of the match after man of the match after 3 on the spin now. Just go in and get a contract extension, son, and say £500,000 on the table for me now, or I'm walking. Because he's in the form of his life. But Marcus Smith, and some people are like, I put something out on Twitter going, he's England's 10, give him the keys. He's England's 10 for a long time now because of the way he's playing. And people are like, well, no, they should have ripped him to shreds with the amount of possession they had and against 14 men. The weather conditions were horrific. And Quinn should have won that game quite comfortably, I thought. Tyrone Green has had an absolute stinker. He's got Danny Kerr, easy pass on his right-hand side. He's under the sticks. They butchered a few chances. Marcus Smith he's gone for a couple of crossfield kicks. Exeter were clever. Once the red card came for Hepburn, they took a winger off, put a prop on, so there was 8 forwards, and there's a lot of space in the backfield. So Marcus Smith goes probing with the crossfield kicks. Lewis Liner should have scored one. Like, he's chasing after one, and he's not really flat out. He's kind of 3/4 pace, whereas if he just put a bit more in, he'd have caught it on the full and gone in. And then it's literally the last play of the game, isn't it? And he's put another perfect kick in for Esterhuizen to get over in the corner. And then in those conditions, tell us that for that conversion. I've kicked at Harlequins, and there's a swirling wind in that stadium. And obviously he's going to know more than anyone and better than anyone how the wind plays there. But he's judged it to perfection. Touchline conversion to win the game. Huge spuds. He's a great player, great talent. And what I don't know whether I liked it or what I did see, is after he started the conversion, did you see he screamed at Stuart Hogg? They gave him the big, yeah! And they're going to be playing against
maybe he shouted teeth, I don't know.
Yeah.
Something.
So they're going to be playing against each other. I wonder if Hoggy saw it, but they'll be playing against each other, hopefully, up in Murrayfield in a couple of weeks with the packed house. We'll get to that later on around whether we're going to see fans in Stadia at the Six Nations.
Did you see that big win coming from Northampton away to Newcastle?
Northampton are a team that, if you're a Northampton fan, you'd be pretty frustrated at times, because at the weekend they were fantastic. When it was a loose game, they're carving up, their attack was sharp. When they get challenged up front, Saints, they, against Saracens the week before, I think they got bullied a little bit up front, especially the second half. But Saints were clinical, really clinical. Falcons are struggling a little bit. They've had a massive dip in form. Defensively, they're struggling. They're leaking points all over the shop. They're getting cut to smithereens at times. So could I see it coming? Maybe you don't never see a team lose. We want to see a team lose 44 points at 8 at home, but fair play to Saints. What was in front of them, they carved it up.
Gloucester continue to impress, don't they? A real statement from them winning away at Saracens.
I mean, what sort of mugs did finish bottom of the league?
Well, you called me out on Twitter, so people think it's me, Andrew. Like, they don't listen. Deny,
reaccuse.
I know. If they don't listen to the pod, they're thinking, his partner in crime is an absolute idiot, Willie is. But I know, phenomenal. They've never won there. I think I'm right in saying. I mean, prove it if they have. But huge win. Two players in the bin throughout the game. Saracens almost fully loaded. Gloucester not expecting to win. They've been great so far this season. If they lost to Sarries and second in the table, massive win. And I was chatting to Alistair Hargreaves as well, because he hosts at Saracens. He does my job. He's my apprentice, and now he's doing it. And he's like, mate, give me a snapshot on Gloucester. So I reeled off all the good things. And he said, what's their point of difference? And I said, look, I can give a throwaway comment, or what sounds like a throwaway comment, but it actually is. And he said, go on. So the driving line-out. I said, I'm telling you now, the driving line-out is ridiculously good. And then they only go and score 2 tries from the drive, don't they? And it is. Like, it's easy to say, they've got a good driving line-out. They've got a phenomenal driving line-out. And when you've got a good driving line-out, and you've got that, especially in the conditions, especially playing in the Prem, when you're playing against Saracens as well, where you're going to get opportunity at the line-out because they kick so much, that's what happens. You can win games. I'm not saying that that's the only reason. Their kicking game was spot on, and they're confident as well. So that is a massive win.
Who are you supporting there, James? Saracens playing against Gloucester.
Why put me on the spot?
Because that's what you do to me, James.
Genuinely, looking at that game, no one, like, as in...
Oh, why being horrible?
Yeah, I'm not sitting on the fence either. Like, I'm watching that game, and for rugby, I wanted Gloucester to win. And it was the same, but it was the same with Wasps Leicester. I wanted Wasps to win that game, like I did. And having seen, I know I did. I because just for rugby, because we love it, don't we? So to make it more interesting at the end of the season, but it's more a little bit around the underdog. And because my mate Ravo's arms at Gloucester and Sarries have won a load of stuff and high-profile players, there's probably a part of me that wanted to see Gloucester win that game.
The good and the bad of Jim Hamilton was imprinted on both teams.
Do you want me to hit you with them? Driving line out, good.
Yeah.
Discipline, poor.
No, I was going to say Gloucester's driving line out, good. That had the stamp of everything that you wanted to bring to a game. And then conversely, defending a driving line out, you used to stand upright, didn't you? And I just saw Mario Toji go backwards and backwards when he was stood upright. Defending a driving line out, you can't be standing up, can you? You've got to get your head in there.
Yeah, you can. That's how
You've got to bend over and push, mate.
No, it isn't, Andrew. You can't do that when you've got an L4, L5 disc problem and you're strong as not upright. I want to give one shout out, though, because as we are talking about driving lineouts, you look at the profile of that Gloucester team, and I've said it here once, let's make a bit of noise about it. Freddie Clark in the second row, who is a back row normally, has filled into that second row position. They've got one of the best lineouts in the Prem. We talk about Esther Hazen at Queen's getting him £500,000. Pay this man 750 is all I'm saying. Freddie Clark, let's get him 750. Wearing the number 4 or 5, I don't know if he's down as number 4, but I think he was wearing 5. Massive. He's had a massive season. And then you factor in Ludlow as well as captain, who we love, Goode. Fair play. It's been a great season for them.
And this is the thing now, you're looking at this sort of period of the Premiership season. If you ain't got a scrum and you struggle to stop a driving line out, or if you've got a great scrum and a decent driving line out, you're going to win games. Because when the weather changes, and I know it's still a synthetic pitch and all that stuff at certain grounds, but look at the conditions across the weekend. Most of the teams with a strong forward pack won, and that's where you've got to win games. Set piece still wins a lot of games in the Premiership, and Gloucester have got a hell of a set piece this year.
Well, speaking of that win for Gloucester at the StoneX Stadium, we can have a chat now with their centre, Billy Twelvetrees. How are you, mate?
Very good. Very good. Thanks for having me.
Bill, it's been a long time coming. Let's just clear something up for the listeners who can't see this. You've got B12 as your name on Zoom. If we're going by teeth colours, mine should be B4 because that's. We do.
Let's get better, Jim. It used to be B8, then it was B6, so you're getting whiter.
I don't know what's better. They're definitely getting whiter, Billy. One of my New Year's resolutions was to invest in the look. But Bill, let's just start with that because we tried to get you on last year, a couple of years ago. Who knows? We've lost track of time. I know the answer to this, or I think I know the answer to it, but let's just get it out of the way. Billy Twelvetrees, is that a real name? Was that a given name, or was it a bought name like a number plate?
Definitely wasn't bought. Definitely, it was my mum's original maiden name. So the dad took her name. she was the youngest of 3 daughters, and they didn't want the name to die out. My dad had brothers, so they had a bargaining chip. They took my mum's name, Twelvetrees, and then we had the kids. I'm one of 4 boys, and then he started a tree surgery business that ended up being Twelvetrees Tree Surgery, and still going strong. I think it may be 39 years now in West Sussex, and he's still climbing trees at a tender age of 63 with my mum at the bottom and raking up. So I know it's brilliant.
That's amazing. That is amazing. I actually thought that was a bit of banter, but the story now. What was your dad's surname?
He's Fenterman, so quite a unique name itself. But the 12-tree thing, and like growing up, you don't know anything about it until the rugby kicked off, and then going to Leicester, then Geordie Murph cracked on a joke about it, about 12 trees and his accent, and then becoming 36 to the Welford Road faithful, and then my dad used to drive up in his battered tree surgery van saying 12 trees tree surgery, so we used to get a lot of press out of that as well, driving to Welford Road. But still going strong.
Nice. Big question from me though, obviously a massive win at the weekend, and we'll get into the nuts and bolts about the win and how well Gloucester are playing. Were you out in London with the boys on Saturday night? Because I've seen a load of stuff on social media. Some of the youngsters absolutely loving life in Mayfair.
No, that's the reason you got me on and not them, because because I think we've got a bye week in Europe this week as well. So all the boys knew they had a bit of time off this week, a bit of downtime, and so a lot of them booked to stay down in London. I know Haystow and Zam and a few of the other young lads met them down there and enjoyed themselves. But me being one of the senior players in the squad whose kids had the school run this week, so definitely could indulge in that whilst all the others are going away on holiday. But boys deserved a big night out in London after that. It hasn't happened, especially to this Gloucester team in a while, winning down at the Allianz Stadium, or StoneX now. But tough place to go and play, as we all know, and as Jim and you guys know, it's pretty tough place. And the weather that it was, don't know if you saw it, it was actually hammering it down. So to beat Sarries in those sort of conditions, is testament to the lads and to Skivs and the coaching group they put together for us.
Yeah, absolutely. We could talk about that now, Bill. But firstly, poor Adam Hastings. There's no way he can deny, reaccuse that someone else is in London with them white tags. Even if it was dark, you could just see these white tags glistening for. It's not me, coach. It's not me, coach. It is.
It's brilliant. No. It's because we had. We played on Boxing Day, and the day after, everyone already had a day off, and then he came back on I think the 28th, and his tan got even better. His tan got better, and his teeth got whiter. And boys, how does that happen, Haystow? We played together on Boxing Day, so I think his tan's always on point, and all those young lads, they're incredibly, good at looking after themselves nowadays, as opposed to back in the day when turning up to, Obi Wiggs training ground and boys didn't too worry, or turning up at the sheds in Gloucester or the pits it was back then, Jim. As you know, boys didn't really worry, but nowadays it's the look, it's the way it is, and boys look after themselves well.
It's amazing, Jim. You never even used to clean your teeth, did you? And now these kids are getting their teeth whitened and everything like that. I'm just amazed at the difference.
Andrew, I used to shave my piabs and do an undercut, mate. That was it. That was where as far as I went, and I thought, as Gloucester captain, that was absolutely enough. But
I remember turning up at the pits in Hartbury, walking in, and you would walk in, shoulders curled. Bill, how are you? Oh, Jim, how are you? Absolutely fooked. And I'm like, you didn't even play the weekend, bud. Oh, mate, I'm fooked.
Positive. Right. It was just trying to bring everyone up, and that's why I went on to be captain. Exactly. Bill, let's talk a little bit about Ruggers. Now, Andrew's got a confession and an apology. I'm sure he's going to go through that due diligence and process. But my good self, naturally close to Gloucester, still keeping contact with the lads. My best mate, Ravo's arm, is team manager. Obviously, Alex Brown, I could name drop everyone here under the sun. But there's been a lot of changes in Gloucester since you've been there. And it's almost one of them, you didn't really know where it's going. And then Skivs comes in, a young coaching team, not as much pressure, arguably, as there would have been in years gone by. And I'll say it, top 4, the lads are flying. What's happened?
I think you answered it there. I think even when COVID hit and Johan left, Humphreys left, and a lot of players left, like the predicament of the world that we all lived in was that we didn't know what professional sport was going to be. And I remember a few of our senior players had meetings with Brownie and Lance, and we didn't know where the club was going. But luckily, a few of us knew Skivs and playing with them at Leicester, and Ed Slater knew him, and we said, yeah, definitely, let's get behind him. And I think that pressure did build last year. I think we had a losing streak of maybe 6 or 7 in a row, and with no fans. And you can imagine playing at Kingsholm or away from home and winning or losing. You suddenly would just walk into the sheds, no atmosphere. Lads would just get the bags and go home, and it just driving home when there was no fans, and it really hurt even more in a way because losing, and it suddenly was just felt so hollow. So the off season, I think, was great for everyone. We beat London Irish at the end of last year, and then we had a COVID outbreak, and suddenly the season was done. So there was a lot of anger within the team that we couldn't finish the way we wanted to, didn't get into the top flight of Europe, and everyone, I think, went away, had a good break, and came back in, and were definitely determined to make this work. And Skivs has just stripped it back. You talk about the coaches, him, Kingy, Dom, Tim Taylor. They're a very close group, and the three of them play together, so they get each other really well. And then we do have a senior group of players that understand each other and understand what Skivs wants from the boys, and it's working at the moment. And this league is brutal. If you're not on it, it's cutthroat. So we had that back end of it last year. A few of the teams are going through that now, but just speaking to some of the Sarries boys at the end of the game, even on the weekend, that was that was the halfway point of the Prem season. And it's January, it's nuts, and we're going all the way to June. So all the players playing definitely don't get carried away, but it just shows how hard it is. But you just got to keep the momentum going as long as you can.
Yeah, certainly. And Jim mentioned something then. I do have to apologise. And I'm just going off the back of what you said. I predicted Gloucester might finish top of the table. And I'm sorry, Billy. I'm sorry to you. I'm sorry to the coaches. I've apologised to Kingy over messaging. And it basically was off the back of the end of last season, right? So it was tough at the back end of last season. And what I meant to say was that happened to Gloucester, but it will be Bath that finished bottom. That's what I really meant. So apologies. But Skivs has, you say he stripped it back. Those boys, him, Alex King, Don Waldock, they all played together at Wasps. There is that sort of different mentality from those boys, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. And I think when they first came in, they kind of said it truthfully, like, lads, what are we about? What have you been doing? You do this one week, and another week you're chucking the ball around from your own try line for 10 phases, not going anywhere. And, we were very inconsistent, had a lot of good players. So, like I said, Skivs stripped it back. He just worked incredibly hard with the forwards for the first year, and Kingy, made us backline appreciate what we have and who we have and the strength in the team. Like, you look at potentially our back three in terms of wingers. You got Santiago Carreras, who's been playing number 10 for Argentina and is a world-class winger. Yeah. Ollie Thorley's a freak of nature and power. And then you got Zam and Johnny, obviously internationals already. And you still got Charlie Sharples nursing a shoulder dislocation coming back. So you look at the players we have got, and then the pack, what they're doing. We want to get to the ball to those boys and cause damage. But now we are in the depths of winter. It's difficult as well. So we're definitely trying to develop a game that we can impose ourselves in opposition, but also play some good brand of rugby.
And Bill, you've kind of given us a snapshot on the environment, but what's the environment like with the different characters? Obviously, Adam Hastings, Scottish, there's a South African influence naturally with the team as well. Ruan Ackerman at number 8, some old guard as well, Ben Morgan, Charlie Sharples, just to name a couple yourself. But how is that kind of mix? Because Gloucester have always been a team that have had a nucleus of local players that have played at Hartpury, and then you throw into the mix that they've got the checkbook out and it's never really quite worked. But again, just going back to looking at this season with Skivs at the helm, young coach and team, and a real mix of players that they've brought in, not the highest profile players when you look at the profile of the league, but just a snapshot of what the culture's like. Well, basically, what the culture's like that I built a few years ago. Is it still going?
Fuck off, Jim.
Oh, it's brilliant. Honestly, I remember those days that we would finish team meetings and come into the changing room like, come on, lads, I know it's going to be rubbish, but let's get out there and do it. Come on. But that's what you said. It was young lads. I was 22 when I turned up at Gloucester, and we had Trinder, Johnny, Sharples, all these guys who looked up to Jim, like Grills, Hazy, all those senior Gloucester lads that are still Gloucester legends now. And but what amazed me then was the different culture of the Leicester. But then game day, it was at Kingsholm in front of the shed. It was just flick of the switch and you do it. So that sort of mentality has definitely changed because the professionalism probably got more. We've changed. We've left Hartpury now. Martin St Quintin's built his own facility at Kingsholm. We've got a new pitch there, and they're developing the site next door. So there's definitely a culture of what Skivs and the management are building. But the players know that the heart of what makes Gloucester great is Kingsholm, the shed, and a bit of old school nature of, like, the town, Gloucester, just get on with it, get your head down, work extremely hard, and the results will come. So, and like you said, the old guard in terms of senior players. I'm 33, still love it. And you got Ed Slater, 33, and then we had Willie Hines last year was leading the pack as well. And we have a lot of senior players that been in different environments and all been in the Gloucester environment for a while, but we knew what made it tick. And now, it's a very quiet group that probably goes a bit understated but works hard. And then our skippers, lads, Lewis Ludlow, who is exactly that. He's just gets on with it, works extremely hard, and kind of creates that environment within it, which is a lot like Skiv. So it's quite simple, but guys that just want to be there and represent the club really well and just go hard for each other.
Mate, I can't believe you just said people used to look up to Jim. Surely it was only because he was about 6'6", not because he was an actual leader, because he moans like every time I phone him or he phones me, the first thing he says is how fucked.
Well, that's all he ever gets. What I messaged him the other week is just like, what's wrong? I'm fucked. And I was asking him to, luckily the club gave me a testimonial this year, and I asked him, like, Jim, Raybo is keen as mustard to play in the second row of my game. Can you play next to him? And he's like, no way. And then it was slowly ticking through his brain. He's like, yeah, I'm in. So he's committed himself to me, which I'm still hoping he does. But yeah, my testimony is, because of COVID, it's been a bit difficult, but hopefully we'll get a game towards the end of the year.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the testimonial, Bill, while we've got you, because this is one of the old romances in rugby. I don't even know if they do it in other sports and football, that still lives. And guys who've given their, obviously, career to the game. Is it 10 years at a club? Like, what's the script, or is it 10 years in rugby? Like, how does it work, and what's going to happen now, migrating through COVID with yours and your captain heading back down to front up the cherry and whites?
Yeah, sure. Amazing. I mean, that's what the boys are desperate to have you get back in the shed. That was the hardest thing, doing the lap before the game. I think it's what all skippers or captains of the club try and do when they first take over. Is, can we stop doing the lap of the shed? But then once you do it once and once you do it twice, the allure of the shed gets you, and you want to do it more and more. But I don't know the rules with the testimonial in terms of the 10 years. But when it first I was asked and awarded it, I was a bit taken aback because of people like Hazy, Bucko at the club, even Charlie Sharples, Henry Trinder, who are, in my mind, Gloucester boys through and through. So to be awarded it was massive. And then COVID hits, and then it put a spanner in the works. We didn't think it was going to happen, but I've got a committee together, and this year we've been we're planning some things, hopefully, and then Omicron hit around Christmas. We've had to postpone a few things, but I want to support some local charities, and a bigger charity in Winston's Wish that is very close to me and my family's heart, and raise as much money for them as we can, and the awareness around Gloucester. And just, I want to have a fun year. Like the couple of years that have been going on, not just in rugby but in life, it's been pretty down and dreary. So the whole point of the game, I spoke to Brownie, because when my first year he had a testimonial, and he admittedly said he didn't enjoy it as much because it came a bit of a stress. He's like, with the bye weeks this year, let's organise a game on a bye weekend, get all the players who played with the past and present who wants to, like yourself, Jim, and play at Kingsholm against a team that you want to play against. So we organised a game against the British and Irish Classic Lions for middle of Feb, but we're hopefully going to push it back to September next year because of COVID. So we get some good awareness going. So the year will be what it is, but I just want everyone to enjoy themselves, raise as much awareness and money and cash for Winston's Wish and the Pied Piper Appeal, which is local to Gloucester, and have some fun.
All right, Billy. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, mate. Best of luck for the rest of the season with Gloucester, and of course your testimonial, mate.
Cheers, Andy. Cheers, Goode. Cheers, Jim. Have a good day, boys.
Cheers, Billy. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Bill. Well done this season, mate. Thanks.
Top lad. He is. Fair play. He, still going. What is he? He's got to be nearly 36, hasn't he? Billy Twelvetrees, 26. No, he's not. He's 33. But he's so lovely lad, isn't he? And you can see he's been at Gloucester for a long time, seen some highs, seen some lows, and he's a big part. And it's a tough place to get into the centre at the minute, obviously, with Atkinson and Chris Harris playing exceptionally well as well. But every time he slips on that jersey, he's doing exceptional things for Gloucester this year.
Yeah, I agree. Top lad, as we just said then, as we always say. But no, really is. Got a lot of time for Bill. Great main as well. We didn't talk about the main. Not that matters, but great to have him on. Cheers, Billy 12.
Let's have a quick look at the URC now then, because Jim, both the Scottish sides had wins at home against Welsh opposition, didn't they?
Quote unquote, I said phenomenal about these two teams pre-New Year in the media. I reckon I said phenomenal maybe 5 times. It was quite embarrassing. I was a bit nervous doing mainstream media, a bit out of sorts. And then Tom Shanklin came at me and was like, "What are you talking about? Phenomenal." I was like, "We actually look at the two Scottish teams at the minute. Edinburgh now top of the URC. Scotland, smashing England, probably going to win the Six Nations. Glasgow beating Exeter at home. Saracens getting beat at home against Edinburgh. It is phenomenal. Like, it genuinely is. And the way that they're playing, bonus point against Cardiff before half-time at the weekend. No fans. Now, I don't want to belittle the Welsh regions. Fortunately now for Scotland, we're better than that. We're better than that now. We are waiting in situ. I say we as a Scotsman. These teams now, Edinburgh and Glasgow getting a good win against the Ospreys as well. And that was probably a more challenging game in terms of the two performances, are waiting for the big ones, the Ulsters, the Munsters, the Leinsters now, to really see where they're at. But Edinburgh, top of the URC, the sad thing about it, no fans. So you look at the English Prem, I don't want to get political or get called out as soon as I say anything on there. It's a real shame that Scottish fans, Edinburgh and Glasgow fans, are not getting to enjoy this. They've felt a lot of pain in recent years. I know Glasgow have been good, Edinburgh not so much in terms of longevity of results. And they're not getting to witness these kinds of performances week in, week out. I know it's only short term, but that's the one sad thing. But as we lead into the Six Nations, because you can't look too much at the URC because it's so bitty at the minute. It's so, who knows, up in the air. But in terms of going forward to the Six Nations and Scotland, you laugh at me. We are phenomenal this year. Genuinely.
Is that we as in Wales? Because one of your things was to be nice to Wales, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, Wales will be all right, I'm sure. But the regions ain't great, Goode. You look at, for whatever reason, and look, it's not something that I'm hugely bothered about. I don't need to be that bothered about, but that's the sad thing and the worrying thing. And I get it wrong every single year, but something's not right in Wales. Like, it's really not. However you look at it in terms of the model, but the focus on the regions, Liam Williams is off to Cardiff. Well, he ain't played the Scarlets. Like, I mean, how's that happening? Again, not that I know too much about it, but I'm looking at it and then I'm looking at the performances. I don't really get it. But on a Scotland's point of view, you can't be happier for the team, especially Edinburgh. Fantastic rugby city, and now they're playing some great stuff. So Cock has put in the foundations. Whether or not he left with the happiness and love of the squad, well, we know that isn't the case. But what he's done is he's still. Well, I'm just saying that they weren't happy being shouted at. Whereas when I was a young lad, I didn't mind getting shouted at because I'd go 2 foot into a breakdown and sort it out that way. But you can't do that now. But what he's instilled, and then what Mike Blair's brought into that team, and you look at the young Scottish lads that are performing as well, it's class, and it's class for Scotland as well.
Yeah, and they're in a good place nationally as well as obviously regionally. They've only got 2 regions. Wales are spread thin across the 4 regions, I think, in terms of their player pool, and then the knock-on effect. Wales have got loads of injuries. When you look at their squad for the Six Nations, I think they might struggle a bit, and we'll get into that in a minute. But Scotland, exciting for you Scottish people, James, to see how you get on. Let's see if you're all farting no poo again.
Well, let's have a little chat about the Irish teams, because 14 Man Munster, impressive performance from them, beating Ulster.
Yeah, Zebo got sent off for a high shot after about 15 minutes. So Munster were down to 14. And you're looking at the game and you're thinking, Ulster, they're in some decent form. Obviously, the wins in Europe that they had, etc. You're thinking it's their time to go down to Munster and win. Things have gone in their favour. It's not a packed out Thomond Park because there's only 5,000 people in the stadium due to the restrictions. And you're thinking Ulster could do it. I think they're 10-6 up at half time. But there was a pretty crucial yellow card for Kieran Treadwell. I think it was a bit of a turning point for a tip tackle. Mike Haley scores off that eventually. And that's where it kind of turned. And fair play to Munster. I mean, over the last few weeks, they've had some harsh harsh luck in terms of everything that's gone on, from being stuck in South Africa to then having to, self-isolate, to then send the kids to Coventry and beat Wasps. Then Van Graham announces that he's leaving. Stephen Larkham, he's leaving as well. Graham Rowntree re-signs the contract, and they found the bite within them to. And I think the fact that it was against Ulster and against a team, an Irish province that people are talking about, they found something from within themselves. Ty Byrne, friend of the show, was phenomenal, a skipper as well. And it was a credit to them. I think Ulster will be frustrated. They lost another friend of the show, John Cooney, to injury, and Hume went off injured as well. Along with that yellow card, they were the big turning points, and they'll be frustrated they didn't win Ulster in the end.
We'll have a look at the European club game in a minute, but you mentioned just before about Six Nations. I know, Jim, you think Scotland are going to be runaway winners this year. There's been a bit of chat about it all being held in one country so you can have crowds. Are you guys across that at all?
Not just one country, England.
Yeah. Well, England's the only place without restrictions in terms of fans and stadium, isn't it? So, for me, you look at, listen, let the French do what the French want to do, because they're a different beast. But we are, part of the United Kingdom. So you sit there and you go, if you're Scotland and if you're Nicola Sturgeon, and she's, whether you make this political or not, it is a political decision at the minute, because Boris has made one choice in England. The Welsh guys made another choice in Wales, and Nicola Sturgeon up in Scotland has made her choice around banning fans from stadia. And you can find your rights and wrongs in it all. So they're the decisions that those people have taken. So if you're the SRU, if you're the WRU, it makes complete sense to me financially, and the spirit of the game, and you hear what the players say. I think some of the Welsh boys, Dan Bigger and Lewis Rees-Summit, have both come out and said, "Yeah, what's the point of playing in an empty stadium?" So if you're the WRU or the SRU and you're saying, right, the government have said we can't have fans, and as it stands at the minute, that is the case. It may change in future, but what they should be doing, personally, I think, is looking at a contingency plan for Scotland to play their games. Speak to Newcastle Football Club, speak to Sunderland Football Club, where it's just over the border and you've got a 30, 40, 50, 60,000 seat stadium to go and play in. So you can sell tickets.
St James's Park, didn't they? They played at St James's Park during the World Cup, and we all know how good that was. I know it was a World Cup and it is very different, but it is. It's 2 hours.
And don't get me wrong, logistically, there's a lot to get through. I haven't even looked at Newcastle United fixtures to see whether actually they could do that. Sunderland's an option. If you're Wales, play it at Bristol City, Ashton Gate. There's 30-odd thousand in there, straight over the bridge. We had all the Scots and the Welsh come in for New Year's Eve, didn't we, into England? And you saw all the stuff in the press around that. So, if you're Wales, even play it at Twickenham. Play your games at Twickenham. It's a rugby stadium, and okay, logistically, there's going to be fees to pay and all stuff like that. But I'm sure you'd still sell it out. I'm sure you would, or you'd get a big crowd for a Six Nations game played at Twickenham if you're Wales. I think Wales play Scotland, do they, Jim? In Wales?
Yeah.
You could move that to Twickenham potentially, or a big stadium in the UK. It's got to be, you've got to find a will and a way to do it. And unless, of course, the WRU and the SRU are bound by the Scottish government and the Welsh government saying, well, if you do that, we ain't giving you any money for something else. And I don't know the ins and outs of it. I don't know whether those governments hold something over the unions where they can control what they do. But if I'm anyone in the WRU or the SRU, I'm thinking contingency plan, let's get it in, let's speak to as many stadia as possible to see if we can play a game and have fans and have atmosphere.
What about the club game? Because Europe is definitely on for the next few weekends, but are we going to see more postponements? A game's going to be replayed? What's happening? Is anything clear?
Oh, let me have a look at these hairy, not hairy balls. I don't know. Who knows? No one knows.
You may well see postponements, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think we will see. I think we will see postponements. So if you're asking me to look through the Manscaped polished with that dodgy rag that's been reused a few times as a face cloth as well, then I'm seeing postponements. I really am. I'm seeing points gifted. Oh gosh, Andy Rowe.
We don't know.
It's bringing me down. I'll be honest. This chat is bringing me down, but it has to be had. And I'm just looking week by week. I'm going day by day and hoping that something else happens. But what it does show you, and again, without segueing too much, is around how congested the season is. It's too much, isn't it? Like, really, when you look at it, we're talking about Prem games that have been canned, and yes, the points are given across. URC games that have been postponed. When they're going to play the games, no one knows. They're probably not. European games, now we're talking about, that have been postponed. When they're going to be replayed, no one knows. Who's getting the point? No one knows. We're talking about the most premier club competition in the world, and we ain't got a Scooby-Doo what's going on. So there's my answer.
Right. Well, before we completely lose our way, Goode, do you want to lead us through the good, the bad, and the ugly?
Yeah, a few bits to Goode this week. We're going to start off in France with Perpignan. It was a big battle of the basement. They beat Biarritz away from home to move themselves out of the relegation zone. So big tip of the slipper to Perpignan. We mentioned it earlier, Munster beating Ulster with only 14 men for 65 minutes. Hougaard being the skipper and the leader. He had a massive performance. So well done to Munster. Jim, we're going to come up to hashtag always Scotland. Is that what it is? Is it hashtag always Scotland?
Well, it's the same thing. It's Edinburgh, but same thing.
Okay, well, we'll mention Glasgow as well, their victory over the Ospreys, but mainly about hashtag always Edinburgh. Top of the combined URC table. Don't know what that means, but they're top. They are top of the table after 8 games for the first time in 12 years after their 34 points to 10 victory over Cardiff. So, Jim, Scottish Rugby, Edinburgh, Glasgow, phenomenal.
Thank you.
Phenomenal, all of you. Especially you, James. Phenomenal. What else was good? Andre Esterhuizen, mentioned him earlier. 3rd man of the match performance on the spin for Harlequins. Offer him a pay rise, whatever you do. He scored the winner versus Exeter. Obviously, Marcus Smith's conversion and his crossfield kick were paramount in that as well. So massive tip of the slipper to those two. The Saints spanking Newcastle Falcons 44 points to 8 away from home. Big victory, big performance. Some of those young boys, especially Fraser Dingwall, he tackles like a Dingwall. He just goes around smashing walls for fun. So hell of an effort from him. What else was good? Well, there's only 2 places to go now, James, I think. It's close. It was very close between the 2. Gloucester are going to get a mention. No, not Bath. Well, Bath won. Let's throw them in there. They won a game. They got 6 points in a day. Orlando Bailey with the spods to knock the penalty over towards the death. So well done to him. But Gloucester get a mention in the Goode, of course. They do. Massive statement win at Saracens. Then they had the night out in London. I'm just loving social media clips of Lewis Rees-Zammit and all the boys. Adam Hastings' teeth all over the shop, whiter than you've ever seen in your life. Gloucester doing exceptionally well at the minute. Massive win over Saracens. I say massive win, it was a point, but in terms of getting a victory down there, it's huge for them. So well done to them. But the Goode, James Hamilton, can only go to one place. He's waiting.
Wasps.
There we go, Jim. I'm glad you said it. They stopped Leicester Tigers' unbeaten start to the season. Alfie Barbary was phenomenal. 18 carries, 5 defenders beaten, and that crucial turnover when Tigers were looking at taking the win towards the end. Lee Blackett's celebrations, his interviews, the whole thing. Wasps needed the victory. First team to beat Leicester Tigers this season. So Wasps get the Goode this week. And the Andy Goode suite was absolutely rammed. So, yeah, very good day at the Coventry Building Society Arena. The bad, a few bits of bad. We've just mentioned it, actually. Six Nations potentially partially being played behind closed doors, especially in Wales and Scotland. Let's hope they come to their senses and that changes. What else was bad? EPCR, still no decision. We've just spoken about it around the postponed games going into rounds 3 and 4. Someone needs to be a leader. Jim says Call of Duty. But EPCR, they get mentioned the bad this week for lack of leadership, I'm going to say, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to call them out.
Yeah, there we go. What else was bad? Breathe, one of my old clubs.
Oh, my old club. What's happened?
Yeah, they lost to Bordeaux at the weekend.
Didn't see it. Was it bad?
Well, they lost at home, and they only just lost, but they've now moved into the bottom 2. They've lost 8 of their last 9 games, so they're on a pretty bad run at the minute. They've slipped into the bottom 2 in the top 14, so they have to get mentioned the bad. Where are we going? Sale. We didn't really speak about them too much this week. Their discipline was absolutely horrific. Alex Sanderson was raging after the game. Bevan Rodd gave 4 penalties away. It wasn't great, was it? Their discipline is shocking. And he said, while I might seem pretty calm, I'm absolutely boiling inside. So I'd hate to be a Sale player today. He was talking about changing ways to make players change their ways. So there's some punishments coming for the Sale boys, isn't there, Jim?
There is. Discipline's been their Achilles heel. I don't know what. Look, you're asking the wrong man about how you change your ways. I don't know, but it is frustrating to see and be a part of, I'm sure, for Sanderson.
Yeah, so they get mentioned the bad this week, but the bad, unfortunately, has to go to another old club of mine. And it's Newcastle Falcons. They got spanked 44-8 at home to Saints at the weekend. Defensively, they've been all over the shop for the last couple of weeks. I mentioned it before, they conceded 31 points last week to Leicester and 43 to London Irish the week before. So unfortunately, Newcastle Falcons, you get the bad this week.
We'll get Minty at a live show and we'll wet his whistle maybe 15, 20 times over responsibly, and that could be the catalyst of
Newcastle's response. Yeah, there we go. The ugly, a couple of bits of ugly. Red cards for Simon Zebo and Rory Sutherland. High shots, weren't too ugly. But unfortunately, the ugly this week has to go to Alec Hepburn. Although it was Joe Marlowe, he did lift him up and drop him on his head. Whether it was intentional or not, I don't know, but that's all I can find from the ugly this week. So Alec Hepburn, you're getting the ugly.
Thanks, Goode. And you've got a shout out to finish off with, don't you?
Yeah, a massive shout out to everyone at Bristol RFC and the family and friends of their former coach, Paul Woodpig Smith, who sadly passed away last month. He helped so many people during his time at the club, and everyone there has been raising a glass to him over the past few weeks. And we'll send in all our love and best wishes to his friends and family as well.
No, absolutely, Goody. Hero.
Thanks, Goody. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, producer Tristan. And thank you very much for listening. Don't forget, check out Eventbrite to get tickets to our Six Nations live tour. And make sure you've subscribed on Spotify.
Rugby Pod.
Spotify, pod.